Hey there nation, welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander CheapSkate, and we're back with another episode of Tales from the Tacklezone, our weekly series of Blood Bowl battle reports, and this is game number 6 of our Season 1 campaign. This one is fought between Iron Major as well as myself. Iron Major is bringing the Dwarf Giants of the Dwarves, while I'm bringing the Gouged Eye of the Orcs. So we're playing on Game 6. This is the very last game before we go into the championship round of our campaign. So with that being said, we're going to play some background music real quick. If you want to see exactly what each of the teams is bringing for this one, go to pause and take a look at your own leisure. So that being said, let's get this battle report on a roll. Alright, so that takes us to the very first half of the game. With the kickoff, I decide to kick the ball directly towards the Dwarf Giants, so that way in the second half of the game I will receive it. And the result on this one is a high kick, which means that my opponent, Iron Major, can maneuver one of his dwarves in position to catch the ball perfectly. And in this case, he decides to elect dwarf player number 7, Tharbor Olekson, who's one of his runners, to move in and to catch the ball as well. And here's a close-up of Tharbor Olekson, the runner, catching that ball, the ball's final destination. It's about 4 squares behind the main line of scrimmage, which is really good for the Dwarves because Dwarves have always struggled with speed in this game, and their passing game isn't really all that good. So the closer they get to the line of scrimmage to make their way to their opponent's end zone, all the better. So with that being said, with kickoff over with, we go directly to the top of Dwarf turn number 1. Alright, so that takes us directly to the top of turn number 1 for the Dwarves, and this photo is taken after the Dwarves' entire turn, so here's an overhead shot of the entire pitch, so that way you can see exactly what ends up happening. For the most part, because Iron Major's runner with the ball is so close to the bottom wide zone, he decides to kind of push the drive forward along the bottom wide zone, so that way he can make his way directly towards the end zone. So the first thing he does, he actually activates one of his Dwarf Slayers. His name is Norin Zakgrundason, as well as one of his linemen named Dwarf player number 11, Carmen Berlinson, and they both decide to throw a tackle directly into Orc player number 2, Goldrot One-Eyed, who's actually one of my Black Orc blockers. You can see there he's just right there on the bottom of the screen, just outside the wide zone. And we're getting a stun result for him as well, so he just kind of gets knocked down for a second. So while that's occurring, Dwarf player number 9, his name is Femerkrag Gundason. He decides to pull a blitz because, well, he's a blitzer, that's what they do. He decides to blitz directly into player number 3 from my team. His name is Grabrook Gutwrencher, and manages to knock him over as well. So that way he's kind of pushed off to the bottom of the screen there as well. Now, while that's occurring, the rest of the team moves as quickly as they can to the bottom wide zone, making their way directly to the end zone as well. So you can see right there in the bottom of the screen, the left-hand side, that's actually Tharbor Olekson. He's got the ball. He's got blitzers as well as a Slayer watching out his front as well as his top to make sure that no one goes after him. And then, of course, the rest of the team just kind of moves over and over to try to make that advantageously. Now, the very last play of the game, of course, takes place on the top of the screen where Dwarf player number 8, Slayer Wargund Thoragunson, tries to throw a block into Orc player number 8. His name is Ugrag the Slaughter, is one of my Black Orc blockers, and they both get a knockdown result as a result of that. And that pretty much is the drive for Dwarf turn number 1. So here's a close of the bottom wide zone where they show a really beautiful effort worth of teamwork with Norin Zakgrundason as well as Carmen Berlinson taking out my Black Orc blocker there on the top of the screen. You can also see how the blitzer number 9, Femerkrag Gundason, managed to knock over my other blitzer with the blue mohawk, Grabrook Gutwrencher as well. And you can see Tharbor Olekson as he makes his way through, and then right behind him is his other runner as well trying to pull support. And that pretty much makes the action and the close-up here on the bottom of the screen. And finally, here's instant replay taking place at the top of the screen where Wargund Thoragunson tries to throw a block into Ugrag the Slaughter, and both of them get a knockdown result as a result of that. So with the first drive over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 1 for the Orcs. And as you can see on the overhead shot of the turn number 1 for the Orcs, all my players who are currently unengaged, they start moving as quickly as they can to the bottom wide zone because I'm going to try to intercept those Dwarves before they actually make it to my end zone. I'm just like the Dwarves in the sense that I'm not a very fast team, but I'm a very hard-hitting team, and that's where it kind of comes into play. So that's exactly what I do. So I start shuffling most of my guys here to the bottom end zone in order to intercept as well. While that's occurring, at the top of the screen, I decided to kind of concentrate some of my efforts there along the center line. So first off, Orc player number 3, his name is Gebrook Gutwrencher. He decides to block Dwarf player number 9, Crag Gunnarsson, with assistance. So my blitzer there in the bottom of the screen, as well as my thrower, kind of helps him out and kind of pushes that guy as well. At the same time, Orc player number 2, Golrot One Eye, stuns Dwarf player number 2, which is pretty awesome as well. His name is Norin Gunnarsson, who's also Troll Slayer. Orc player number 13, which is my Troll, Tough Gut Bonk Smasher, the Troll. He throws a block directly to Dwarf player number 6, Morgrund Athenson, and manages to push him back as well as knock him over as well. Same thing with Orc player number 4, Face Scalp Dax. He blocks Dwarf player 10, Zekrad Kazgligson, as well as Orc player number 12, Black Rogant. He pushes Dwarf player number 5, Fimgrond Skarkson as well. And for the last play, my Orc player number 8, Ugrag the Slaughter, my Black Orc, he actually, and him as well as my Blitzer Orc player number 9, Crumgrund Ripsnort, they moved south towards the bottom of the wide zone there, so that way they kind of intercept the Dwarves from making it to the end zone. And that pretty much makes up my entire turn for turn number 1 for the Orcs. So here's a close-up of the action at the bottom of the screen there. You can see that my Black Orc blocker is pushing back that Dwarf Slayer. At the same time, the rest of my team just kind of moves up to intercept. I'm even moving my throwers in that case, because at this point I just need bodies in the bottom of the wide zone to stop these Dwarves from making their drive. And here's a close-up of the action in the middle lines of the line of scrimmage as well, with my blind men as well as my troll pushing over the Orc defenders, which is kind of important because my plan here is if I manage to get the ball away from the Dwarves, I plan on driving right through the center line, so this is all busted up, and hopefully I can make it to their end zone if I can get an interception or catch a fumble or whatever might have you. Alright, so that takes us directly to Dwarf turn number 2, and this photo is taken after the turn is over with, and as you can see, a lot of shuffling and maneuvering is taking place for the Dwarves. Dwarves keep on pushing forward along the main center line, as well as on the top of the screen, as well as pushing to the bottom wide zone here in the bottom of the screen as well. Basically, the team from the north wide zone moves down south to the bottom wide zone in order to lend some support. They basically end up in the tackle zone of my players, so that way if I try to move down south, I won't be able to do so without having to try to dodge, and of course, causing me to turnover if I fill it. And since Orcs aren't very quick or agile, it's actually a pretty good move for him. Probably the most dynamic of the plays actually occurred with Dwarf player number 2, Norin Zagrundason, who's actually the Slayer. He managed to push back my Black Orc blocker, Golrot One Eye, twice away from the wide zone directly into the center field as well. So you see, it's going to just pushes him right out of the wide zone, makes it one less blocker that he has to worry about as well. At the same time, Dwarf player number 9, Fimmerkrag Kangensen, his blitzer, he loads a blitz directly into team player number 5, Ugrod Gormless, is one of my linemen, managed to knock him down as well. This kind of opens up a little opening there for his player, who the runner to just kind of slip through at that point. And as you can see, the rest of the team kind of maneuvers in position. They start moving to block into the tackle zones of my players in the wide zone there in the bottom. And you can see in the back there, his runner's just getting ready to move forward as quickly as he possibly can, so that way he can kind of exploit the gap in the lines and make it to the end zone. So here's a close-up of the action taking place at the top of the screen for instant replay. You can see that his blitzer lineman as well as his troll slayer is engaging my Black Orc blocker and my blitzer, getting inside their tackle zones. So if I try to move out of there, I have to take a dodge check, which of course I probably won't pass because Orcs are not very fleet of foot, if you know what I mean. At the same time, here's a close-up of the action taking place on the bottom of the screen as well. You can see his instant replay on this one as they're just trying to basically make a gauntlet of Dwarven linemen and blitzers trying to push their way through the wide zone, trying to open up a gap so that way that runner can slip right through and head directly to my end zone. And finally, here's a close-up of the center line of scrimmage where his Dwarves are just basically back on their feet again and push me back additional space, so that way they're trying to hold their own in the main center line as well. And that pretty much makes up the turn for the Dwarves. Alright, so that takes directly to Orc turn number 2, and as you can see in this photo is taken after all the movement phase, and not much really happens. I just kind of short my defenses the best I can to make a solid line of green Orcs to try to stop the Dwarves from making their drive for the most part. Just trying to run an interference is what I'm trying to do because these Dwarves are pretty tough. So first off, Orc player number 5, Ugrod Gormless blocks Dwarf player number 9, Crag Gunderson, which is the guy at the top of the screen there. Just applying a block, so I'm just kind of pushing him back because all he really does for the most part. At the same time, Orc player number 3, Gebrook Gutwrencher, he just throws a block into Dwarf player number 12, Morden Korkderson, and pushes him into the crowd. It actually caused a knockout, which is actually pretty surprising. So because of that, he goes crashing into the crowd, it gets knocked down, it gets put directly into the dugout because of it, because he won't be able to come back into the second half. At the same time, Orc player number 10, Blood Grub Killer Spleen blocks Dwarf player number 2, Norin Zagrundason, with support from a Black Orc blocker, managed to push him up to the top of the middle of the center field, so that way I kind of get him out of play, so that way I can maneuver my forces around. And then of course the rest of my team that can move without, you know, interfering with the tackle zones, they move in position to kind of create a wall right there in the bottom of the wide zone, so that way my opponent can't slip through. So as a close-up, my Orcs just trying to make a solid wall defense between my lineman, my blitzer, my thrower, as well as my Black Orc blocker to stop the Dwarves from slipping through and trying to get to my end zone. And here's a close-up of that poor Dwarf player who got knocked out. Basically, Mordheim, Cortison is his name. He basically got knocked on the ground and got put into the penalty box. Well, not the penalty box, but the knockout box. He won't be able to come back in until the second half. So that takes us directly to Dwarves turn number 3, and the insanity occurs in this turn. The most insane thing I've ever seen in Blood Bowl so far has occurred during this drive. So first of all, what ends up happening is that my opponent Iron Magic activates Dwarf player number 3, Berlin Borlickson, and he throws a block directly into my blitzer, Orc player number 9, Chrome Grow Ripsnort. He does that so that way it kind of frees up his area up there, so that way he doesn't worry about people kind of tackling his players. The next thing he decides to do, he decides to activate Dwarf player number 7, Thorbor Olekson, which is the runner who has the ball at this point. This guy moves up the entire line of scrimmage back into the center field, and then from there he throws a long pass directly to Dwarf player number 8, Wargund Thora Gunson, which is the Dwarf Slayer who's up there at the top of the center field. It's a really hard pass, but he actually manages to throw the ball, and not only does he manage to throw the ball, he actually completes the pass. Wargun Thorgorison manages to catch the ball as well. Does it completely without re-rolls. Just rolled 6s like a champ on that throw. So because of that, Wargun Thorgorison now has the ball. Wargun Thorgorison, he then decides to move directly down the line of the center field, heading directly to the end zone. He actually goes for it twice to make up the short distance, and he makes it both times as well, just bypassing my entire defense, going right over my main line of defense directly into my open space right there in the back. Most insane thing I've ever seen in my life. It was absolutely insane. And then of course the rest of the team just kind of moves up forward, so that way they can take up blocking positions to stop my players from actually trying to intercept him and try to stop him as well. So that part was insane. Alright, so here's a close-up of his team members throwing a block directly into my blitzer there, so that way it leaves up his space for his troll slayer to run. And you can see Thorbor Orlikson right there on the bottom of the screen. That's where he basically was when he threw the ball and lobbed it directly to Dwarf player number 8, the Slayer Wargun Thorgornison, who just took the ball and just ran with it. And here's a close-up of Dwarf Slayer Wargund Thora Gunson, who grabs the ball and goes for it, and he's just one square away from making it to the end zone. So I gotta think of something quick, because if I don't, they're gonna score a touchdown, and that'll be really, really bad for me. Alright, so that takes directly to Orcs turn number 3, and it's a very short drive, not much really happens. Pretty much what ends up happening is that my blitzer, Crumb Grub Ripsnort, tries to dodge outside the tackle zone of the Dwarf Slayer that's next to him. Unfortunately, I fail that dodge result, and I fall, and that causes an immediate turnover to the Dwarves. And here's a close-up of my poor blitzer trying to get up on his feet to try to dodge, but fails, and he just kind of falls to the ground as well, which causes me to turn over to Dwarf turn number 4. And as you can see, there's an overhead shot of the entirety of Dwarf turn number 4, and it's actually a pretty short turn, because the only thing that Iron Major basically does, he activates Dwarf player number 8, Wargun Thorgundison, who's his Dwarf Slayer with the ball, and he just moves over one square and goes directly into my end zone. Touchdown number 1 for the Dwarf Giants, as that Troll Slayer Wargun Thorgundson makes it all the way to my end zone and manages to secure the very first point for the Dwarf Giants in this playoff game, leading to the championships game of our Blood Bowl campaign. So with that being said, the Dwarf players earn a point for themselves, as well as a star player point for their new Slayer, and because of that, we go set up back up the kickoff and get ready to kick off again for another drive. Alright, so we go directly to the kickoff, and as you can see here, it looks like more like a traditional style of football lines. Pretty much both of our teams are lined up right directly in the center. The reason why is because I'm receiving the ball and he wants to play defensively as well. The kickoff result on this one ends up being a riot, so because of that, both of our teams lose a turn for this first half of the game as well, which is kind of bad because it doesn't give me enough time. Well, it doesn't give me enough time, but it takes away my ability to try to get a goal or a touchdown within the allotted amount of time. It's going to be very, very stressful in that part, so that part was kind of rough. So here's the final destination of the ball. It just ends up a couple of spaces right before my two throwers, which is actually kind of nice because all I got to do now is just move my throwers to get the ball, and then we can just throw it and hopefully just try to cross the field as quickly as you possibly can and try to score a touchdown before the time runs out. So that takes us directly to Orc turn number 5 on this one. As you can see, a lot of action just kind of takes place primarily along the center lines as well as the upper wide zone as well, as you can see there. For the most part, Orc player number 8, Ugrag the Slaughter, he throws a block directly into Dwarf Blitzer number 3, Berlin Barrison, actually manages to push him back as well. Orc player number 9, my Blitzer, Krumgrau Ribsnort, he managed to push Dwarf player number 2, Norin Zach Grundison, managed to push him back a space directly towards the edge of the crowd there. So that way it just kind of makes up a little opening there, right there in the top wide zone as well. After that, Orc player number 7, Uzek the Loon, is one of my thrower. He moves up all the way to the top of the wide zone there, and then Orc player number 1, Snip Ripper Face Beater, which is my thrower, he moves, picks up the ball, and he throws a pass directly to Orc player number 7, Uzek the Loon, which is one of my throwers. Ends up being a successful pass, which is really awesome as well, and it's because of that both those guys are in star player points. And then the rest of my team, of course, is directly in the center line. They move up and throw blocks as best they can. As you can see, almost everybody got pushed back or got knocked back, so my dwarf, the dwarf line is slowly collapsing as my orcs are pushing forward to try to just take off the offense in that part. So pretty successful turn, all things considered. So here's the instant replay on the very top of the screen. As you can see, my orcs are starting to push along the center drive, along the top of the wide zone there, pushing everyone back to make a little hole there, so that way Uzek the Loon can slip through. And there's a beautiful close-up of Uzek the Loon catching that ball thrown by a Snip Ripper Face Beater. And here's the instant replay of the center line as my entire orc line either pushes back or knocks back all the dwarf defenders and moves forward one square forward, kind of like a tidal wave avalanche of green flesh and steel, which is pretty awesome. And here's an instant replay of my Dwarf Blitzer managing to push back the Dwarf Slayer a couple of spaces, so that way it prevents that guy from trying to intercepting my players on the top of the screen. So that being said, we go directly to the Dwarves now for their next turn. And that takes us directly to turn number 6 for the Dwarves, and this one actually ends up a very short drive. The reason why is because Dwarf player number 3, Berlin Barrison, tries to throw a block into Orc player number 8, Ugrag the Slaughter. Unfortunate for him, though, it fails really bad. Attacker is down, and to make things worse, he's also stunned, which is also pretty awesome as well, all things considered. So here's a close-up of his Blitzer trying to take out my Black Orc blocker, and he realizes that I don't break too easily. He just goes face down to the ground, and he's passed out for a turn, which is all kinds of great. So with that turn over with, we go directly to the top of Orc turn number 6. And that takes directly to the top of Orc turn number 6. You can see a lot of dramatic movement taking place here for the most part. Pretty much for the most part, most of the action taking place on the top wide zone. I managed to push through and actually slip through and also throw the ball at the same time. Let's go and talk about that real quick. So first of all, Orc player number 8, Ugrag the Slaughter, throws a block directly into Dwarf player number 2, Norin Zach Grundson, which I managed to push him directly into the crowd. He gets pushed back onto the field. He ends up being stunned, so he's laying the face down on the ground. And what that does with that Blitzer out of the way, as well as that Slayer out of the way, it pretty much leaves his entire wide zone at the top of the screen completely vulnerable for that. So because of that, I decided to move up Crumb Grub Ripsnort, my Blitzer with the purple mohawk. He moves up and goes for it twice, ending up 2 squares away from the end field for the Dwarves. After that, I then move up player number 7, Uzek the Loon, my thrower, and I throw a pass directly into Orc player number 9, and Crumb Grub Ripsnort manages to catch the ball and manages to catch it. It did take a reroll in order to make that catch for Crumb Grub Ripsnort to catch the ball, but he eventually did manage to do it, earned him both star points for making that complete pass. As you can see on the rest of the screen, though, the rest of my team just kind of moves and blocks at the same time. The dwarf players who are knocked over, as you can see, my Black Orc blocker as well as my lineman just kind of scoot around from the bottom left to kind of lend some support if they can, and the rest of the troll and the rest of my linemen just manage to push back the players as well. And that pretty much makes up my turn on this drive. So here's a beautiful instant replay of my Blitzer Crumb Grub Ripsnort catching the ball and moving as quickly as he can directly toward the dwarf end zone to score another touchdown. And here's a replay of all my orcs just managing to slip past the dwarf lines, as well as push back their players as well. And so with that, we go directly to the top of turn number 7 for the Dwarves. Alright, so we go directly to the Dwarf turn number 7, and unfortunately for my buddy Iron Major, it doesn't go very well for him. He activates Oathgrin Zakmirson, one of his throwers, Dwarf player number 1. He tries a blitz directly into Crim Grim Ripsnort, my blitzer on the top of the screen. Unfortunately for me, though, it ends up with an attacker down result, so because of that, he is knocked down, and that immediately ends the turn for Dwarf players number 7. So here's a beautiful replay of Oathgrin Zakmirson trying to blitz directly into Krumgra Ripsnort, but he fails and goes crashing down, and that leaves my blitzer free to make it to the end zone on my next turn. So with that being said, we go directly to Orc turn number 7. And the only thing I do for my turn is once again activate my Blitzer, Crumbgrove Ripsnort, who caught that beautiful pass on the previous turn. And he just moves over 2 squares directly into the Dwarf end zone and scoring my very first touchdown for this game. And touchdown number 1 for the Gouged Eye for the Orcs. So I managed to secure my very first touchdown on this one, and it's kind of nice because for the very first time in a very long time, I'm actually making successful passes, which is all kinds of greatness for my team. So because of that, we go directly to turn number 8, but both of us realize that nobody can score a touchdown within the span of a single turn. So because of that, we just pretty much call that game, and we just reorganize for the kickoff and go immediately to the halftime. So with that being said, we're going to play some messages for our sponsors at the halftime. You can take a look exactly what the field looks like and exactly show what kind of point values are currently taking place for our teams. Alright, so that takes us directly to the second half of the game, and once again, I will be receiving the ball since I kicked off to the opposing team in the very first half of the game, and the kickoff result on this one ends up being cheering fans. What ends up happening is that the Dwarves have a better fan factor than I do, so because of that, the Dwarf Giants receive one additional reroll as opposed to I do because they won the cheering fans one. And as you can see, the ball just kind of lands right smack dab behind my main line between my 2 throwers there and the back, and that pretty much results in the kickoff for this one. And here's a close-up of the ball's final destination. Ends up a couple of squares behind my throwers, probably, in the middle of the table, which is actually pretty good for them. So I do lose some yardage on that one because I have to go back and scoop up the ball, but there's the breaks, I suppose, at this point. So that being said, we go directly to the top of Orc turn number 1 for the second half of the game. Alright, so that takes us directly to Orcs turn number 1, and this photo is taken after the drive, and as you can see, for the most part, I tried to do exactly the same thing I did last time by trying to skirt around the top of the wide zone and make it try the end zone again, because it worked pretty well the first time, so hopefully it'll work exactly the same way the second time. So I activate Orc player number 1, his name is Sneb Ripper Face Beater. He's one of my throwers. I actually move him to the top of the wide zone, just moving him up to his normal movement allowance. I then activate Orc player number 7, my second thrower, Uzak the Loon. He moves and picks the ball, and then throws to Orc player number 1, Sneb Ripper Face Beater, and the pass is good, and both of them score star player points for catching as well as throwing the ball successfully. Now, while that's occurring, my black Orc blocker on the top of the wide zone, Orc player number 3, Gut Wrencher, blitzes directly into Dwarf player number 2, which is the Norin Zach Grundison, which is one of the Troll Slayers. Managed to knock him down as well as push him back as well, and of course the rest of the team just kind of moves forward, pushing and blocking as best they possibly can. Unfortunately for me though, Orc player number 4, Face Galbadax, when he tries to go directly into player number 11, Carmen Burlinson, I get an attacker down results because that he goes crashing down and pretty much ends my drive for turn number 1 for the Orcs. So here's a beautiful pass that's conducted by my 2 Orc throwers as well as Uzak the Loon throws the ball directly into Sneb Ripper Face Beater and scoring them both star player points, which is all kinds of awesome. And here's an awesome replay of my Blitzer, just going directly into Gut Wrencher, going directly into Norman Zakrunnison and knocking him over as well, which is always a good thing when it comes to blocking your enemies. And finally, here's an instant replay of Face Galbadax going directly into Dwarf player number 11, Carmen Burlinson, and getting an attacker down result as well. So that being said, we go directly to the top of turn number 1 for the Dwarves. Alright, so here's exactly the top of turn number 1 for the Dwarves. They basically just kind of scoot around as quick as they possibly can to try to intercept. As you can see, the Dwarves have pretty much taken all the non-committed players and move as quick as they can to the top wide zone to try to intercept and stop me from actually moving through. And that's pretty much what he does for the most part. He does throw some blocks and things, but nothing all that fantastic. Ends up being a pretty uneventful turn for the most part as he just kind of maneuvers to get his players into position. And here's the instant replay of the Dwarf Giants that they all maneuver up to the top of the screen in order to try to intercept and stop me from actually making it through the wide zone and trying to block me at the same time. So that takes directly to Orc turn number 2 on this one, and as you can see in this photo, I realized that my opponent has kind of made a mistake. As he maneuvered all of his forces away from the main line of scrimmage to the top wide zone, he leaves the bottom wide zone completely wide open. As you can see, there's a beautiful gap where there's nobody there, and he's trying to stop my drive taking place at the top of the screen. So what I decided to do is try to exploit that. First thing I do, of course, I activate Orc player number 2, Golrot Eye, which is one of my black Orc blockers. He throws a block directly to Dwarf player number 8, War Gunthor Thorgunnisson, which is a Troll Slayer. I knock directly into him, throw a blitz directly into him, so that way he just kind of goes down, so that way he won't be able to intercept what's going on in the bottom of the screen there. So you can see there, knock that Dwarf Slayer down. From there, what I decided to do is that I decided to move up Snip Ripper Face Beater. I move him down the line of scrimmage, down the center line towards the center of the field, and then I throw a pass directly into Dwarf player number 9, Crumb Grub Ripsnort, which is my blitzer in the bottom of the wide zone with the purple mohawk. Managed to throw that ball. The throw was good, and the catch is good in the receiving end, so because of that, both those guys receive star player points. And then from there, I maneuver Crumb Grub Ripsnort as quick as I can down the wide zone directly towards the Dwarf end zone, which is all kinds of awesome as well. And of course, I move my players into blocking positions so that way they won't be able to get into my blitzer, and hopefully can make it to the end zone without being attacked too badly. So here's a close-up of the main center line of the Dwarf players getting knocked over by my defenders as well as my troll. At the same time, my guys are moving up forward to kind of get into blocking positions. Probably the most important replay of those on the top there on the left-hand side where my Dwarf Orc player number 2 managed to throw that blitz directly into the Troll Slayer. So that part was all kinds of awesome. And here's an instant replay of Krungbro Ripsnort taking the ball and catching it and running as quick as he can down the end zone to make it directly to the Dwarves' end zone and try to score another touchdown. So with that, we go directly to Dwarf turn number 2 for this one, and for the most part, just my buddy Iron Major just trying to maneuver his forces as quick as he can. Pretty much the only people who can actually get there are his runners. So because of that, both his runners move down south and are trying to intercept Krumgr Ripsnort as quick as they can. And then Dwarf player number 8, the Troll Slayer Rorgund Thorgunnisson, tries to block directly into Orc player number 2, but unfortunately for him, though, he fails his block, gets an attacker down result as well. So because of that, he goes crashing down and immediately causes an immediate turnover for the Dwarves. So here's a close-up of Rorgund Thorgunnisson trying to throw a block directly into Golrot Runai. Unfortunately for him, though, he ended up with an attacker down result, so he goes crashing to the ground with not much really happening from there as well, causing immediate turnover for the Dwarves. Alright, so that takes directly to Orc turn number 3 for this second half, and the very first thing I do, of course, is activate Orc player number 9, Krumgrub Ripsnort. Basically, I move up my blitzer as quick as he can and goes for it twice. I had to use a reroll in order to get that very last going for it twice, but I managed to get that reroll off, and so because of that, Krumgrub Ripsnort goes directly into the end zone and scoring a second touchdown for my team. Touchdown number 2 for the Orcs Gouged Eye team. So that part is all kinds of awesome. Scoring me 2 touchdowns against the 1 touchdown from the Dwarf Giants as well. Pretty much securing me 1 point lead on this one, which is pretty awesome as well. And at the same time, Krumgr Ripsnort manages to secure himself a star player point as a bonus to that. So that being said, we reorganize our team for another kickoff. Alright, so we go back to the kickoff on this one. I'll be kicking the ball off towards the Dwarves in this one, and of course the result that came up from this was called Changing Weather. So once again, we roll for the result of the Changing Weather. Once again, it comes up being a nice result once again, which is actually kind of nice. So because of that, what all it means is that the ball just bounces additional space over when it's time for it to scatter. So because of that, the kickoff is good. And here's the final resting place for the ball when it finally bounces. It just bounces 2 squares right smack dab in the middle between the 2 throwers, which is all kinds of good for the Dwarves because that way they don't have to worry about losing yardage. They can just move up forward, scoop up the ball, and continue on with the rest of their play. Alright, so that takes directly to Dwarf turn number 3. And as you can see in this photo, not much really happens for the most part for Dwarf turn number 3. What ends up happening is that Dwarf runner number 1, his name is Othgrin Zagmirson. Pretty much that runner just kind of moves up as quick as he can up to the top of the wide zone for the most part. Looks like he's going to try to exploit and try to make his way up to the top there. Now, Dwarf player number 7, Tharbor Orlickson, which is the other thrower, he goes to pick up the ball, but unfortunately for him, he fumbles it the first time around. So our Major then, of course, uses up a reroll to catch the ball, pick up the ball again, and once again he fails it as well. So because of that, the ball scatters 1 space forward and pretty much ends the drive for turn number 3 for the Dwarves. So here's instant replay of Dwarf player number 1, Othgrin Zagmirson, as he moves up as quickly as he can up to the top wide zone. Looks like he's trying to go for another pass run game once again. And here's a close-up of Dwarf player number 7, Tharbor Alexson, as he tries to pick up the ball and fails it twice, even with a reroll. So because of that, it ends directly turn number 3 for the Dwarves. We go directly to turn number 4 for the Orcs. Alright, so that takes directly to Orc turn number 4, and as you can see, a lot of dramatic movement basically takes place here from the main line. Pretty much what ends up happening is I take the offense and just kind of smash right into his line. I bust up a lot of holes inside of it, and it allows my players to kind of slip through in the middle, heading directly towards the back, heading straight towards the ball. So first of all, Orc player number 2, my blocker Golrot, one-eyed, blitzes directly into Dwarf player number 3, Berlin Barrison, which is one of his blitzers, managed to push him back as well. Orc player number 4, Face Gulpadax, blocks Dwarf player number 11, Carmen Berlinson, manages to knock him knockdown as well. It originally was a both knockdown result, but I used one of my rerolls to change that, so it ends up being pretty good for me. At the same time, Blitzer number 9, Grimgar Ripsnore, as well as Orc player 10, Bloodgrob, Kill a Spleen, move through the lines that are broken right there in the center as they start making the offense heading straight towards the Dwarf thrower with the ball right there in the middle of the field. While it's occurring, Orc player number 12, Black Rogant, pushes Dwarf player number 4, Thrunlund Finrin Vincent, there we go, manages to push him back, and finally Orc player number 5, Ugrod Gormless, moves through as well, that little gap down the line, and the rest of my team just maneuvers forward as quick as they possibly can. So here's another instant replay real quick. As you can see, I busted the main dwarf line, and because of that, it allows my players to slip through the gaps and move as quick as they can directly towards the ball, and hopefully I can try to intercept and take it to the end zone. And here's a close-up of the action taking place on the top wide zone as well, as my Orcs try to move through as quick as they can and try to push through and take the offense on this one. So with that, we go directly to the top of turn number 4 for the Dwarves, and sensing the threat that's coming directly towards his way as I try to bust through his main line, the Iron Major activates Dwarf player number 7. His name is Tharbor Okalixon. He basically moves and picks the ball, and instead of trying to run it up to the top because everything is kind of chaotic up there, he decides to go for a long pass. He actually throws to Dwarf player number 8, Rorgund Thoragunson. That's the Dwarf Slayers in the bottom wide zone there in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. He actually lobs that ball directly towards him. He catches it, makes a complete pass, earning both those guys star player points in the process of doing so. Once he catches the ball, Wargund Thorgensen, the Dwarf Slayer, he actually moves as quickly as he can along the wide zone there in the bottom of the screen. He decides not to go for it just because he doesn't want to have him fail any agility tests, so because that just kind of stops about the midway point between the Gouged Eye's half of the pitch. Shortly thereafter, he actually activates his Blitzer, Dwarf player number 3, Berlin Barrison, who then pushes Orc player number 2, Golrot One-Eyed, my Black Orc blocker, managed to push him back. At the same time, Dwarf player number 10, Zakrad Kazlikson, he also goes into Orc player number 10 as well. Bloodgob Kill the Spleen, but unfortunately for him, they both get knockdown results. They both go crashing to the ground. And unfortunately for our Major, that pretty much ends his turn prematurely on this drive. Alright, so from there we go directly to Orcs turn number 5, and for my very first action I decided to activate Snib Ripper Facebeater. He's my thrower, Orc player number 1. I decided to kind of go for like a risk move on this one. I decided to have him blitz directly into Dwarf player number 8, Wargun Thorgensen, because he's carrying the ball, and luckily for me I do get a knockdown result because of that. So because of that, the ball flies out of his hands and it fumbles over one turn as well. As you can see in this photo, I then kind of just maneuver my team over to the bottom wide zone as quick as I can, throwing some blocks and also moving some players into the tackle zones of other Dwarf players just to make sure that they don't try to pick up the ball and try to move up and into my end zone any further. So here's an instant replay of Orc player number 1, Snib Ripper Facebeater going directly into Wargun Thorgunison, so that part's pretty awesome. The ball causes the fumble as well. As you can see, I'm forcing my team down into the bottom wide zone to pick up the ball. And here's some close-up of some maneuvers with my troll as well as my lineman, trying to stop the Dwarf players from going down and trying to grab the ball as well. And that pretty much makes up turn number 5 for the Orcs. So from there we go back to Dwarf play number 5 on this one, and once again my friend Iron Major activates Wargun Thorgunison. He gets up and he actually grabs the ball, and he actually makes his 2 dodges right past Snib Ripper Facebeater, just kind of skirting right past him, right between him as well as my other thrower there in the midfield area. So he manages to get the ball, slips through my lines, and actually ends up about 2 spaces away from making it to the end zone, which is really bad for me. At the same time, Dwarf player number 3, Berlin Barrison, pushes Ogre player number 2, Golrot One-Eyed, out of the way once again, trying to make that opening to protect his the Troll Slayer from being intercepted. At the same time, Dwarf player number 9, Femmercrag Kag Gunderson, also blacks Orc player number 8, Ugrag the Slaughterer up in the top there, and the rest of the team just kind of moves through to try to catch up with their Dwarf Slayer, try to protect him as best they can. So here's an instant replay shot real quick of Rorgun Thorgunison, and now those are the 2 impressive dodges he made to slip through my main lines, carrying the ball all the way to my end zone, which is pretty bad for me. And here's a close-up of the play that takes place in the middle of the center field, showing that he ends up trying to block my blockers as well as my linemen for kind of pursuing his Troll Slayer as well. So once again, we go directly to Orc player number 6 on this one, and once again I activate Snib Ripper Facebeater, and once again he also blitzes directly into Wargun Thorgunison. The ball fumbles directly into Snib Ripper Facebeater, who does attempt to catch the ball, but unfortunately for him it fumbles again to the top left corner directly to my other Orc thrower, which is Orc player number 7, Uzek the Loon, who once again tries to catch it, but unfortunately I fumbled the ball, and the ball scatters over one more time to the left hand side as well, pretty much ending the drive for my turn because I dropped the ball. And here's an instant replay real quick showing my two throwers, Snip Ripper, Face Beater, and Uzek the Loon, who just can't manage a hot potato of balls that's bouncing around all the way across from the main lines directly to the center of my field. So with that, we go directly to Dwarf's turn number 6 on this one, and my friend Iron Major decides to activate his other runner, Dwarf player number 1, that's Oathgrin Zach Mearson. He tries to run up and try to pick up the ball as well. Unfortunately for him, though, he does fumble it. He does use one of his rerolls in order to try to catch that ball, but unfortunately, the ball fumbles one more time. It just kind of goes out of his grasp, and therefore pretty much ending the drive for the Orcs, for the Dwarves on this turn as well. So here's an instant replay, close-up real quick of Oathgrin Zach Mearson fumbling the ball. As you can see there, it bounces up to the right behind Orc player number 7. So the ball is right behind Uzek the Loon, and it also ends the drive for Dwarf's turn 6 for this play. So with that, we go directly to Orcs turn number 7, and pretty much my plan here is to try to play keep away as best as I can and get the ball away from my end zone, because if I can manage to delay him for another 2 turns, I can win this game with a 1-up on him with my touchdowns. So because I activate Uzek the Loon actually moves up, picks up the ball, and he actually used the reroll in order to do that because I failed it my first time, but the second time managed to catch that perfectly. Once I get the ball, I then lob it with a long pass to Orc player number 5, which is Ugrod Gormless, is actually one of my linemen. That's the guys over there on the left-hand bottom of the wide zone. I throw the ball directly to him, and Ugrod Gormless catches it, unknowing, and goes for it twice, just whipping right past the team and just moving as quickly as he possibly can, just running directly towards the Dwarf end zone. Like I said, I don't think I'm going to be able to make a touchdown with that play, but I am going to try to keep the ball away as long as I possibly can. And while I'm doing that as well, the rest of the team, of course, moves up and gets into blocking positions, knocking over a couple of Dwarves in the process of doing so that way I can protect my runner as he tries to escape with the ball. The very last play of the game actually takes place when Orc player number 4, Face Galbadax, tries to block Dwarf player number 6, Morgrund Antonsen, but he is knocked down in the process of doing so, and that pretty much ends my drive on this one. So here's instant replay, closer real quick of Uzek the Loon picking the ball and lobbing it all the way across the field to Ugrod Gormless. And here's an instant replay, close-up real quick of Ugrod Gormless, who has the ball and going for it and slipping past the Dwarf lines, heading directly towards the end zone as well. And you can also see in the top of the screen right there, you can kind of see Morgrund Antonsen, who managed to knock down Face Galbadax as I try to throw a block and obviously failing to make that play. So with that, we go directly to Dwarf turn number 7, and once again, my friend Iron Major activates his runner, Dwarf player number 7, Tharbor Oaklikson. He actually blitzes directly into Orc player number 5, Ugrod Gormless, who's carrying the ball, managed to knock him over, and also cause the bound to also bounce one more time over the left space, and pretty much ends his turn on this one as well. Unfortunately, he does try to do another block, but unfortunately for him, though, he wasn't able to do so, and it actually gets both knocked down as a result of that. So because of that, both of them are down, also ends the turn for the Dwarves. So here's a close-up of Tharbor Oaklikson, who goes directly into player number 5, Ugrod Gormless. Both of them get a knockdown result, which does call the ball the fumble up to the left-hand side, and that pretty much ends the drive. And it's at this moment that my buddy Iron Major realizes that there's no way he's going to be able to grab that ball and also make a touchdown. So with that, we go directly to the end of the game with the Gouged Eye earning 2 touchdowns, while the Dwarf Giants earning only 1 touchdown on that one as well. And that pretty much ends the game number 6 for our playoffs for our championship round of our Tales from the Tacklezone campaign. So with that being said, we're going to go directly to the post game because this battle report is now officially over.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
So going to the post game, starting off with the Dwarf Giants, none of their team actually suffered injuries, so there's no injuries there. However, Rorgund Thorgensen actually makes an advancement on this one, earns the multiple block skills. That way he can actually throw 2 blocks into players if they happen to be adjacent to his tackle zone. So it's really good for that Troll Slayer to have because he's a beast when it comes to throwing blocks. From their winnings, the Dwarf Giants managed to score 120,000 gold pieces, in which they used the 120,000 gold pieces to purchase 2 rerolls for their team, additional rerolls, as well as 2 up fan factor as well, giving a fan factor of 8 on that one as well. Their new record for their league points now is at 4 league points. Their new record is at 1 win, 1 loss, and 1 draw. And their new team value now is at 1,350,000 gold pieces. So in the end, for the Gouged Eye, I suffered no injuries on that one, so that part's kind of nice as well. And for my advancements, Snip Ripper, Face Beater, my thrower, learns the accurate skill, so now he's even more accurate when he's throwing his passes. At the same time, my Blitzer, Crumb Grub, Ripsnort also learns the multiple block skill as well, which is really good for him because he is a beast when it comes to throwing blocks as well. For my winnings, I managed to earn 70,000 gold pieces for this one, and I used it to buy up 7 points of fan factor because I only had 1 fan factor for most of the campaign, and that really kind of bit me when it came to kickoffs as well as for my winnings as well. My new record now is at 2 wins as well as 1 loss. My new league points is at 6 points of league points, and my new team value is at 1,270,000 gold pieces. So that's going to do it for this one, you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest greatest hobby news related to this channel. That's going to do it for this one, you guys. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out and stay classy.